recordings.
Oh yeah. One.
All right. Always recording going. All right. Should be going live soon. Let me check. Let me check. All right. And we're firing. So I'm gonna start us with the intro music, and we'll get right into it.
Yeah.
Going live. Spinning. Almost. I hope. Hmm.
What an interesting day.
It's like nothing works. I think the internet's going through something.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, doesn't seem like it wants to work, so we'll just uh we'll just start the show without our intro music, and that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let me pull up my doc here, and let's get this going. All right. Welcome to this episode of Go Time, everyone. Glad to have you back. So, Go and PHP, sitting in a tree. I don't know, there's, kissing going on, but we're going to figure out why Go and PHP are together on this particular episode. Because last time I touched PHP was many years ago, and although it had its charms, it did have some quirks as well, and we may touch on those during this episode. But joining me today are two folks who actually work with Go and PHP on a regular basis, and that got us curious. Actually, someone actually suggested this episode. I believe. Let me look up there. I think it was a. Oh, I will find who it was and give him a shout out for suggesting this episode. And they actually recommended RoadRunner, which is a project we'll definitely be touching on by name as an example of Go and PHP working well together. So our two guests, Mr. Valerie, and I'm going to butcher your last name, Piaczynski. Did I get that right? Close enough. Close enough. And then also and Anton Titov. Hopefully I got that right.
Yeah, that's
Oh, close
correct.
enough.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. Okay. So Valerie is a software developer at Spiral Scout, the team that works on Roadrunner, the particular project that we'll be touching on. He enjoys working on algorithms, writing his own operating system for learning purposes in C++, and helping folks get into programming, which is pretty awesome. He also streams on Twitch, mostly open source Go stuff. Anton is actually the CTO and co-founder at Spiral Scout, also the same team that actively works behind a Roadrunner. He loves software and hardware. We were just talking before the show about some of the hardware stuff he's working on with Go. Rather than going the traditional route of embedded stuff, with C or Python and whatnot. Yeah, I got a chance to take a peek at that. Very interesting stuff. He also enjoys some DIY robotics and machine learning. Welcome to you both, Chance.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi
I
guys.
just I was saying I do not try to pronounce my surname, so it's like rather complicated.
Yep,
But
yep,
yours
it's all
sounds
good.
correct.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, yeah.
So Go and PHP. I let's start with what brought you to PHP. Like why are you working on PHP like this day and age? Well, not that there's anything wrong with working on PHP this day and age. I'm saying like out of all the languages one could pick, PHP's been around a long, long, long time.
Yeah.
Like back
Yeah.
in infancy of the web, it was like at some point PHP was like the it language to actually write, dynamic websites and whatnot, right? Competing with the like of ASP, Classic, as we refer to it now, in the likes of Cold Fusion. I mean, these things like are like granddaddies or grandmommies of the early web. What led you to PHP?
Well, I mean, I was, as you mentioned, it's a very old language. I was young and naive, and I wanted to have my own forum or my own CMS board. And if you're trying to build a forum back in like 05, the only option would be for you is PHP. It's like I remember
Mhm.
trying to download the source code of like the website and trying to figure out why it doesn't work. Well, apparently you had to install a bunch of instruments to also make it work, but it just been the beginning of kind of this long journey, and I'm still
Mhm.
sticking to that. So it's a beautiful language these days, and it changed a lot.
Yeah, yeah, very nice. So, surprisingly, I'm not a PHP developer. So, I'm just I'm a Go developer on and working on a Go part of the all of this like ecosystem. RoadRunner connecting to PHP parts. So, Anton for me is like a light at the end of the tunnel, like connected to me from the PHP side. Like, yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so then you've got the PHP, as part of your background, and then here comes along Go. Like, when did you get into it, and what led you to actually combining those two things?
I can probably talk from kind of combining part. I mean,
Hmm.
the goal been around when I was kind of studying it. It was around for a few years, and I only heard like a good things about it, like performance, fast, concurrent, all of these kind of terms, which now, well, I know we all know about Golang, but well, I mean, I actually just tried to well just play with that, and I made a couple interesting applications, and since PHP was our main kind of production stack, I was just trying to see how I can kind of use it within these practices, because all of the examples on Golang was kind of like small and easy, right? And on PHP we have frameworks like 10 layers of abstractions, ORMs, and etc. So it's kind of very different worlds.
Hmm.
So I mean, it was just curious. It was kind of very curious language for someone who been working with like this type of language for a very long time. And well, then it's been an idea. Can we actually make them work together? Can we get benefits of PHP and benefits in Go, and can improve the developer experience or our own experience?
Hmm. Valerie?
Yes, for me, I came to Spiral Scout like in 2018 as just a regular developer on one of the projects, like Golang developer. Previously, I was programming in .NET, so I was heavily involved into .NET ecosystem, like C Sharp. I've got some like 408 I guess 40 70 483 exam pass. It's like C Sharp, something like C Sharp Professional. So, and I saw a guy who worked on very famous taxi company based in New York, and I saw he rewriting all the Ruby on Rails system into some interesting language. So,
Mm.
and I was, oh, what is? So it was like 2015, maybe. And in early days of the Golang, So I like what is language. So could you please explain me about what is? So and I was really impressed about first web server written in Golang. So it was so small, so little lines of code, and it brings you to a web server that can respond with like just hello world, but it just works. After that, I came into like Spiral Scout, was involved into like internal projects, and one time I started to write a tests in the RoadRunner. So it was like a mess because Anthony from the PHP expertise like forgot to return an errors from the functions. Like there are no errors if you don't return them. And I, of course, I fixed it, and it was like a lot of errors in the tests. And I say this, send this PR to Anton, and Anton was like, "Oh my god, why you did this?" And we like, okay, we start to fixing it, and we finally fixed all of this like errors. And after that, I was like involved into the Golang part of the RoadRunner, and we started working with Anton together to improve the quality too. So
Well, he pretty much rewrote most of the parts of it, but good.
yeah, maybe.
Okay,
So
so the obviously you saw a need and you decided to fill in and started meeting doing some of the things that you saw that need to be done, and that's always awesome. That's a lot. That's how the majority of open source contributions happen, right? You find
yeah,
something that you enjoy working on and you contribute code to it, and that's a beautiful thing.
yeah,
Obviously the like when I think about my experience with PHP and also the hoops we had to jump through to sort of to quote unquote make it scale and and sort of using today's terminology and whatnot. The when I sort of read the description of the project and I'm like, okay, this is a load balancer rolled into some sort of application server rolled into some sort of, I mean, it's trying to do a lot of things. So why don't we start with what sort of the differences between a plain Jane PHP application server, like the last one I was used to was like Zen or something like that.
It
Like
was a
what's
very
the
long
difference
time ago.
between something? Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm dating myself here.
yeah,
But what's the difference between sort of those I guess, for lack of a better terminology, those traditional application servers that are designed to run PHP
So,
versus approach?
I mean, to answer this question, it's actually important to understand PHP actually become like this type of language, and bottleneck which is hard to scale. So
Hmm.
like imagine every time you write the Golang application, which say let's doing some endpoint on HTTP, every time you even get HTTP request, imagine that you have to bootload your application from the disk, start it, answer this request, and then kill this application and over for every request.
Hmm.
This sounds super.
Hmm.
Well, that's how PHP been working for 26 plus years, and it's quite amazing that you have the tag which quite starts on every request, and it still kind of powers like the pretty much of backend on internet. Well, I mean public backend, let's say.
Right.
So the idea was actually quite simple. Move this overhead. And I mean, when I started working with RoadRunner, I started working with actually protocol, just making communication between two languages. And the first example was quite simple. Okay, we have, let's say, a function in Golang to do, let's say, some heavy math, which on PHP might be not optimal. And I have this like highly OOP strict code in PHP. And by the way, it's all about like OOP, strict types, annotations, attributes. Like it's all very, very similar to days, except it's free, open, and very easy to learn, let's say. So then I just tried to make a call from PHP to Golang using this like internal socket or Unix socket RPC call, and it did work. And then I tried to make a very stupid experiment, actually. I tried the native PHP library for RabbitMQ to push message, and I library of RabbitMQ to push message, but with additional this RPC overhead from PHP. And we run some tests, and that the PHP to Golang bridge to RabbitMQ works like not like margin much, but like few percent faster than a native solution. Like, that's weird. This shouldn't be happening, right? And this kind of led to the idea that like if PHP is like a very beautiful language to model business processes, not like high scale IO operations like traffic management or ingresses. It's single threaded. It's like very dummy in terms of like you can go left, you can go right in some cases. You still can shoot yourself to the foot, but these days it's much harder. But it's very good to have good libraries like permission models, document mapping, data mapping. Like if you'll see how to work with mapping JSON in Golang and PHP, you'll definitely see a major difference in favor of PHP because it's dynamic language. And Golang on the other side is beautiful to manage like all of these putting connections, sockets, like retries, restarts, delays, all of this fun stuff which PHP just by the definition by model can't. So then we just try to create the which been invoking code from PHP using worker pools. So you like hot processes of PHP which already in memory, like let's say core, and then just ask one of them, just do this work for me. You don't kill your application, you don't restart it, like you have no overhead. And when we did this code, well, it was working like 11 times faster than native. So we created HTTP layer at top, called RoadRunner, and it's been kind of with us since then. We haven't written a single application without this model, probably like since 2019.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty amazing speech.
So if I'm a developer looking, so okay, so let me see how I can state this question. So who is this for? Is it the Go developer who has to work with PHP, or the PHP developer who has to work with Go, or like who are you targeting with this approach?
I guess both of them.
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, the main auditory PHP people, because what the main idea of RoadRunner is like you can take these complex aspects of like queue load balancing, HTTPS traffic, temporal gRPC, and you're going to make them boring for these developers. But just out of the box. You want gRPC? Sure, just plug and play. You want temporal? Sure, like it's already here, just make it work. You don't need to install anything. It basically manages the complex stuff for you. But at the same time, for the Golang engineers who typically work in pair or on the same team as PHP engineers, because this is application server, like it's very easy to modify the requests and calls which you do with PHP. So like you can add your own validations, like authentications, and all obviously going to work much faster and possibly like with much deeper integration with modern like cloud native tools. You have like I know readiness, healthy endpoints, like all of the stuff you need to make application basically like native to the current environments. But obviously the first target auditorium, well, it's just engineers and companies who just trying to write scalable code, but at the same time don't necessarily want to hire like 10 Rust engineers. Like it's more like a balance between the engineer and how fast you can find them, and the performance and quality of the software you create.
Okay, so this is as much a technical decision as it is a business one, as really most.
Well,
most
in a long term, yes, because how many which come to the point we're going to scrap out PHP and move to something else? It's been a bunch,
Yeah.
right? Facebook invented their own language,
Right.
Hack,
Good old
and
hack.
contacted
Right.
their editor did the same thing, So it's kind of like becomes so expensive, so you even have to jump in and make your own compiler for this stuff. And we can just move this line when you have to move from one tag to another. Well, I mean, ideally up to infinity. Just if you do it on other language, I mean, it's all about microservices these days and C-built applications. So like you're no longer stuck to one language. And well, you're a startup, you're trying to integrate with few providers and you need to create 12, 15 API endpoints, like who are you going to be using for that? Do you really want to hire senior engineers? Or you can just use senior PHP engineers, which is much higher like availability since it's so old language, which is going to do the same, which is going to work the same on the same performance. Just going to be done easy because you can source people easier.
Yeah, and at the same time, if you wanted some like to do some pretty hard work or some low-level stuff, you can easily write a simple plugin and plug it into RoadRunner, like solve your needs with that. So we also write our own plugin system because so initially we wanted to use like Golang native plugin system. It works only on Linux at the moment, but so we waited a little for the Windows support, but so I guess it doesn't seem to happen. So the Windows support for Golang native plugins, but we wrote our own plugin system called Endure, which is suitable for like plugging all of these pieces of Golang, combining into one part, like initializing it, starting to serve it, stopping, so building a tree with all of those plugins, so you can. For example, if you write once a configuration parser, for example, if you write like a parser from the YAML, for example, you don't need to write or copy or create some SDK to bring this part into every plugin. So you can just request this in your init function, and RoadRunner will take care about finding this dependency, initializing it, topologically sorting the graph and providing this initialized dependency for you. So you only need to just, okay, configuration, please give me the gRPC section or give me some other section. So if something goes wrong, RoadRunner will take care about this, of course, and like provide you very like nice but unreadable for PHP users message about like going some panic or some errors, something like this. Yeah, and for the PHP, all complexity for the PHP user is to properly define what do you need in the configuration. Like you have a configuration, you need HTTP, so you just enable HTTP section, put your configuration, and RoadRunner will remove all other plugins from the tree. Like it won't even start. It just run your section for your needs, like HTTP or gRPC. Or you can write your own plugin, put your section in the configuration, built with our tool called Velox. This is a tool which helps you to build RoadRunner with your own custom plugins based on GitHub. So it's all of this heavy complex stuff was moved to Golang part, and the open nicey things moved to like PHP.
I mean, there's actually quite an exchange of knowledge because this first container actually came like as architectural pattern PHP applications. Because if you've seen .NET, Java, PHP applications, interfaces that inherit each other, they like use declarations and etc. So like you can't work without container. You need bin dependencies. You need to manage all of this stuff. So like essentially we use this idea inside a RoadRunner, but well obviously added the Golang favor to initiate it all correctly in the correct order. And answering the question like how like it's a large tool already, well it's kind of not, because it's just a container like CLI tools and instruments, and the rest is just kind of like independent plugins. So we can add them without kind of influencing on each other or worrying to break the tool. We want to run with HTTP layer? Sure. If you don't, well, disable the plugin and build it. It's going to be exactly the same thing, just less memory to manage.
So let's dive in a little bit into the weeds, if we will. Are you like shipping like a binary? Like are you interpreting PHP, or like what's the sort of if I'm a developer, what does my experience look like?
So from PHP perspective, the less invasive work possible. You literally don't need to do anything to make it work from PHP side. There's no extensions, there is no like special CLIs, interpreters, nothing. What we actually do, we do the 20, 30 years old approach, which still drives all of the application. We manage the worker pool. So what RoadRunner does, it's actually PHP interpreter, well, which is a binary, invokes it your application and then keeps it in memory in a like pre-warmed state. And when the request payload comes, which can come for like HTTP endpoint, task queue, temporal workflow, PC, whatever, like you name it, you just send this payload to PHP and wait for it to complete. But like over the lifetime, the only main difference for the engineer, for some engineers quite hard, is to realize that your application lives longer than just a single request. And you can't just global variable counter, which is going to plus plus and expect it's going to be 0 on next request. So like that's the only difference. But besides that, it's a PHP, same exact extensions, configurations as you typically use. It just managed in a bit different flavor.
But surprisingly, RoadRunner about the PHP. So RoadRunner is not binded to, especially to a PHP. It just runs some command you specify in your configuration. So you can do it in Python. You can even run Golang inside the Golang, like Golang inside the Golang workers. So the main purpose for the RoadRunner is to manage the process. Who will be in this process? So for the RoadRunner, it doesn't care about this.
Yeah.
It care about the protocol. So protocol is language agnostic. So I saw a project. Some guy wrote this, implement this protocol in Python. Anton showed me like some times ago. So it's like Python running inside the RoadRunner. So because it's the same, pretty the same model, like the one-threaded model in the Python. So some guy wrote this in, and yeah, so it works.
So this sounds like a process manager, if you will. So if you wanted to, you could have Python, obviously, as you just mentioned, Ruby.
Yes.
Obviously PHP natively, and whatever else other sort of interpreted languages you want. Like even like precompiled things, it sounds like you can just have in there and then just invoke it.
Take 20 years old Perl file and run it on the RoadRunner. But if you want to do it, obviously that's a good question. But yes, I mean, I think the only mention, or main mention of PHP is actually the title of RoadRunner as a PHP application management server. But besides that, there is nothing which is specifically to single language, except that the single language has the largest SDK code base to communicate with all the features from RoadRunner. But that's just a nuance, quite frankly.
Okay, so if I'm used to working with single process PHP style application, I think you touched on this earlier, where like it's like I'm restarting the world traditionally when I'm dealing with PHP, where one request just restarts the world, and basically it's like everything is like a new, right? In this world where instead there's a worker pool, there's a process management happening. Like, do you find that developers have to sort of have a mindset to basically to think, okay, there's not just one process here, there's multiple? So does that change sort of the nature of how they program? Do they switch from programming against a single process to now having multiple processes to contend with?
Well, I mean, when people still have multiple processes, they just create it on demand, but you still have like 500 PHP processes running the request. But there is definitely the kind of conception shift in people. It's been much harder earlier, like even a year ago, but now like the why it's easy these days, because very minimal amount of people write on pure PHP. Like unlike Golang, where most of the time you write on pure Golang, maybe like using some small HTTP overlay framework, but mostly you're going to be using SPL functions, let's say, to do most of your business stuff. In PHP, really different. You have Symfony or Laravel or our infrastructure framework, Spiral, and they're all managed for you. So the beautiful thing, all of these frameworks over the time, well, we created our own specifically for this purpose, but all other frameworks, they actually do upgrade solves all of these kind of thinking nuances for the engineer. They reboot some parts of the services, like clean up the caches and etc. So if you're using modern framework, and if you're using RoadRunner, you most likely even notice a difference in like 90% of your activity. It's still going to be some nuances, but most of them already known and already been solved. If you're using framework which specifically built for like ours, well, nothing is different for you. Just write and manage and like state is managed in memory and all complete.
So would a PHP developer ever even need to know what's under the hood, what's running their what their process is? I assume they'll never really come in unless they want to like come in contact with any Go whatsoever.
Well, it's like owning a car and being able to drive a car, right?
Mhm.
Like if you have RoadRunner and PHP and default PHP SDK, you can do wonderful things. You can make PHP respond in like 50 microseconds, like run on the all realms and all the queries, use gRPC and like use and all of this stuff. But if you also know Golang, you can do even crazier stuff. Like you can take, for example, model from Keros, compress it, put it into the Golang SDK, and then invoke from PHP, and ta-dam, you now have machine learning embedded directly into PHP via Golang bridge. So like you can do these crazy things if you know multiple languages, specifically Golang. And Golang is beautiful because it's it's quite easy to learn. It doesn't have many of these legacy overhead and nuances you have to remember. But so it's not required, but if you do, well, you're essentially a superhero in PHP world.
Yeah, and also you hardware project, Anthony.
Well, yeah, that's another example how you can
It's
use it.
also written, yeah, in RoadRunner and PHP combination.
I can
Yeah.
I can show it. Well, when it's going to be up to you, Johnny.
Well, given that most of our users are going to be listening, not viewing this, we may not be able to show them much.
I'll try to walk it through. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I do want to sort of understand. Obviously, this is an open source project, and folks are contributing to it. I do want to understand sort of what are some of the hardest challenges that you encountered, like while sort of coming up with this model. It obviously you're running a process manager. You have to worry about interprocess communication. You have to worry about sort of how to keep things in memory efficiently, all that stuff. I'm curious as to sort of what are some of those biggest challenges and that perhaps that you're still facing.
I think challenges Valeria can speak. I don't think we're facing like a lot of them now. But when we started working on this tool, it's been a number of interesting things to solve. Well, number one, we had to create a protocol to communicate between two different languages, and it had to work over Python or Unix sockets and TCP sockets. So it's been like, okay, how are you going to create a low-level IPC protocol if you don't want to jump to like shared memory or all of these things? This being not hard conceptual problem because you can always like default like net string. You have the length of the message with like in a fixed head size, and then you have the payload body. So it's read the package between languages. Then obviously it was a problem with the process manager, right? Because PHP sometimes not to start if you don't send it right parameters, or it may crash. If again you send an invalid payload, doesn't do it anymore. It's been like a demo build. Obviously, race conditions on Golang side. Oh, that was because you can't just write a process manager. No one just writes a process manager. Sorry for the reference. You also need to collect the stats. You also need to watch for the process to restart. You need to collect the error, right? You need to understand how many times you invoked it, what was when it was started. Like I think things like okay, let's check how the process exists, and you call let's say time now, and you immediately performance, right? Because it's doing a syscall. Well, back in the day, or for example, you have a request come in, but at the same time, the PHP process runs out of the memory. So what's going to happen is going to fail. How you're going to start it? Like it's been so many like little integrational hell and edge cases for work. But like eventually, like once we jumped from this part, what we managed is another part of the hell. When you have a single server which has HTTP endpoint, everything is quite easy, right? You have request, packet, send to PHP, and well, Bob's your uncle. But when you're doing HTTP, and then you also want to manage the queue, Protos Manager, like cooperate with RabbitMQ. What if you have HTTP which runs a PHP which sends data to queue? So now you have which not only have to work, they also have to be created in a correct order, wait for each of them to properly connect, and then make it work. So like that was a part of like I don't know, scratching a lot because it was so hard to solve with all of these dependencies and plugins and hidden dependencies, because like PHP worker can theoretically do anything once. It's like it can call to queue and it can invoke a endpoint through the RoadRunner to itself, which is well, I'm not even sure what's going to happen in this case. But that's why we created the container. We can treat it eventually endure, which just solves all these problems. And now no integrational hell between like plugins and RoadRunner. They all like have interfaces, very easy to connect them together. It's basically become a framework for the application server.
So if you have this deployed and is it recommended basically you have basically a single tenant kind of situation whereby you don't want sort of a processes from multiple parties that aren't really associated with the same company, right? You don't want to run this in as a some sort of open to all multi-tenant sort of system process sort of peeking into what's happening with another process within this world. Is it isolation between these things running all in the same system?
Well, it could be. We can isolate many different ways. We can isolate them by running with different permission model in PHP. You can literally forbid most of the functions, which, well, some engineers and hackers will still be able to bypass. You can run them in groups and user in different memory spaces. I mean, right now we don't run it in a like shared fashion, as like old-fashioned shared hostings. It's mostly suitable for the most classic approach now. You have a container. Within this container, you have your application, your APIs, so like other service functions, and it's fully self-contained inside this container. Multi-tenant model, you don't run 10 different PHP scripts. You solve the multi-tenancy on the application design level within your application domain. I hope it makes sense. But we've been thinking about this problem for a while.
That was weird. Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was weird. Like Riverside just kicked me out. Said final repetition. Just kicked me out.
Nice.
Oh man, sorry about that. Where were we?
Well, you ask a question. It sounds like
the container aspect, the security aspect of things. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in thinking about it all the time, looking for a frozen picture. So
Yeah.
boring. I'll try to make it short.
Well, that's good. That means the recording would have captured everything you said. Good.
Yes.
I was just one guy got kicked out. Awesome.
Well, basically, in short, if you want to do the multi-tenancy, doing it in your application code, RoadRunner and is designed to actually work the best in modern like Docker environment or container-based environment. Per application instance, let's say.
Yeah.
Single instance of RoadRunner per single instance of application. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I guess as for me, it was a lot of challenges in like to write all these things, because basically RoadRunner, as you can see in like RoadRunner repository, is just a CLI interface. So it's just a RoadRunner serve, RoadRunner workers command, but everything is hidden under the main, I guess, 3 parts. Those parts are it's Endure, as Anton mentioned, is like it was a surprise for me, because in Go we don't have any containers, so we just don't need them to get something dependency, or so I heard about project in Uber, like Uber FX, but or Google Wire, I guess. But I don't think it's much popular solutions. So in my project, I never worked with a container, but PHP is everything about containers and everything about dependency injection and so on. So we have to write such algorithmic container which mutate based on the configuration. So it's not like please give me some dependency. It's about I have a configuration. I have a set of I guess at the moment we have 20 plugins or more. I guess I don't know how much exactly, but you provide a bunch of plugins, provide a configuration and said, okay, now build this. Build this properly, managing the connection, as Anton says, that if you provide, for example, initialize a logger, and logger needs a configuration, so you have to properly topologically sort all these things to provide first to initialize first configuration, then provide this pointer to a logger. So the Golang race flag won't help us here because it's so distributed all over the plugins. So you have to manage and see everything, every race condition by yourself. So you have to be very careful with writing all of the things, but we hide all this complexity inside the endure. And so, and you have to be sure that provided dependency is concurrent free. So you can't use it from the different threads. But the second part is also Gorish. It's a protocol. It's in Gorish version 1 and version 2, it was like Anton said, it's very basic protocol, I guess 14 bytes of correct me if I'm wrong, Anton, 14 bytes or 18 bytes.
It's been 7. The first version had 17
bytes, yeah. It's like a few flags, payloads in big endian, little endian, and payload. But imagine the situation if you pass your payload over the pipes, for example. You don't have any mechanism to CRC or to check if this payload correct. Passing it from the one side of the wire to another. But RoadRunner and Gorish version 3 has protocol based on IP protocol. So I wrote recently a few protocols like TCP/IP, IP protocol, and combine them all together to have a proper protocol for communicating with PHP parts. So we have asynchronous support, we have a header length in IP protocol, we have a variable length options. So we have all of this funny stuff to extend it and not to break it from version to version. And I guess the third part is the SDK, which is contains all these worker pools. And this is complicating stuff because, you have to, for example, imagine you have a HTTP plugin enabled and the user wants to get a statistic about the workers. So the one approach is to stop the world, stop all of the HTTP requests and get all of the statistics about, get all of the pointers to workers, get the stat, pretty it with some format and show to the user. And another approach is to have some shared place where you can safely get at any time, without logs even, this pointer and to provide to user. But when the restart happens or some issue happens, it will log only in this case. So it's statistics in the RoadRunner, it's basically free for user. It's not interrupt the actual request. I mean, not HTTP, not jobs. So it's none of them. And
it's quite funny how it actually how we jump because most of our users are actually like already mature PHP applications and like large startups, and like they don't play with like 10 requests. Like, okay, I mean, we just bump a few millions a day, and you see this bug. So what is bug about? Oh, you know what? Over time, some like it's like things which you could never imagine while developing the thing, but when they catch them, thankfully, user reports them. And it's just easy to like kind of very works on scale.
Yeah. Imagine a situation when you have a completely fair scheduler in Golang. So I guess you saw this ticket recently. It's about to write a completely fair scheduler, bring it to Golang. So we started to work. We started working with that, I guess, year before, to provide a completely fair scheduler to schedule jobs inside the RoadRunner. So we don't finish it yet, but we continuously working on it. So to provide like a binary heaps algorithm to sort by priorities all of these jobs, like to, for example, if you have an urgent jobs to like to execute, you have to like set the priority 1, and it will be sorted and schedule it properly. So there are a lot of such things, very complicated things which you should like should work inside the RoadRunner and hide all of this complexity for user just to specify few values in the configuration. Just okay, I don't need a gRPC, so it's removed, but all of this complexity hidden under the hood. Like
That's why it's hard to create very nice user-friendly APIs. That's
Yeah.
there's a
yeah,
lot going on under the hood, but like you're making it easy for people to actually
What
use.
can be
That's
easier
yeah,
to make
that's so
just
true.
a hello world endpoint? Yeah, well, you need a load balancer, Kubernetes cluster, control plane, and a few other things. That's easy.
I know that
Yeah,
man, things have changed over the
yeah,
last
yeah.
decade or two. So I do want to switch gears a little bit here, sort of to understand like if someone wanted to contribute, because it sounds like there's still a lot of awesome ideas sort of at play and coming to the project. If someone wanted to contribute to that, like what would basically be sort of a safe expectation of them? Should they know how to work in PHP? Should they know how to do Go? Is there work for both sides of the fence? Like, what do you need to contribute to this project?
So
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So basically, I don't know PHP at all. So I started to googling like, okay, Anthony, I need to some test script. Could you please write it for me? Or I need to like a for loop, like to iterate or some variable. So I need to Google how to write a for loop in
For
PHP. And yeah. And this is great because I don't need to involve in the like PHP part. I can concentrate only to improving the Golang user experience, and like to contribute to the RoadRunner. It depends on who are you as a developer. You are a PHP developer or you are like Golang developer. If you're like a Golang developer, it's very easy. You just need to go to the RoadRunner issues, find an issue marked like help needed or like easy to resolve, like some entry level issues. Or if you want to like contribute to PHP part, I guess it's a Spiral framework, which you can like also we have a lot of tickets to improve our PHP part, and you don't need to know both side of this at the same time. You only need to know like PHP or Go, or if you want to contribute both, usually yeah you need to know both, but yeah it's
sounds like
not
there's room.
necessary.
Sounds like there's room for either
Yeah,
side.
it's very
Yeah,
we contribution. Like on PHP, you can help us to improve SDKs and Golang. You can go as deep into the weeds as like SSL wish, like dump little algos to run some crazy stuff.
even Python developers can write a protocol version 3, and like or Ruby on Rails developer
Yeah, if you want
like
to use, if you want, we will definitely accept contributions to make it work for other languages.
Nice.
yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, it is that time when we switch gears to talk about some unpopular opinions, and I hope you brought some.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can make this work. Let me see if Riverside doesn't kick me out. Hey, it says it's live. All right.
Unpopular opinion.
I actually think you should probably leave.
Unpopular opinion.
All right. So let's start with you, Anton. What did you bring?
You only need 64 kilobytes of RAM,
For what?
just for
Ever?
everything. Well,
Okay, prove it.
for the most of the stuff, we'll just say like people have to like try to work kind of more memory efficient applications, because when you work with hardware, 64 kilobytes of memory is a ton. You know, you can make robot moves, blink eyes, go on the stairs, and do some other stuff. And what kilobytes of JavaScript application? Tell me, please. Maybe
Not
nothing.
much.
So
I
yeah,
have a 64. I have a 64 gigs and even can run a stream.
Goodness. I mean, I will say that over the years we've gotten more. Well, let me put it nicely. We don't worry very much about sort of CPU and memory and disk, right? Things that used to be expensive, like even like 20, 30 years ago, right? Not so much now. We take these things for granted now.
Yeah.
if you know how to pack it down to this level, you can create much larger scalable applications. Because when you create, let's say, the traffic filtering software or like VPN cores, right, the things which actually like real IP, let's say, not just API endpoints, that's where you have to optimize it. And like knowing these basics and knowing that you actually like yes, 64 kilobytes sounds like a small amount. And it's a joke which Bill Gates said back in the day. If someone don't remember, like obviously he's wrong. But if you realize how actually huge this amount, like 64 kilobytes of stack on like some hardware chip can let you to stream a ton of traffic, and build something like I don't know, like Starlink, because is doing great things. They have to be optimized. You can't put 10 CPU server in space. It's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Valerie, what did you bring?
So mine is open source is a hard work. It's for my opinion, it's a much harder than some enterprise development, because I was involved in different enterprise projects, and the flow is pretty much defined. Like if customer support has some, it can process it, send to specialists like quality assurance. It can test it, write a cases, it brings to you. You can see this ticket, fix the problem, run the tests, and so on. But in open source, a lot of people think that they should not bother themselves to write a proper description of the issue. It's like, I have a problem, please fix it. Or one of my favorite issues is like nuts and question mark. So what does it mean? So a lot of people
are offering nuts, or are they asking you?
Yeah. But when I said, please describe what do you want, like you want to not support or something else, and close this ticket, the guy asked me, why are so rude? Ticket. So, and there are a lot of such things in the open source development. So you should handle a lot of things. You should have a various types of virtual machines to run on Ubuntu previous versions, Ubuntu current versions, Debian, FreeBSD, macOS, and Windows different versions. So if someone send you a ticket, I guess some people think that this is a joke, like open source development is like a joke for us, or I don't know. So it's like write a free 2 or 3 like lines of the description, or do not provide like test cases. So it's very complicated to figure out what do you really want. so so one guy asks me like, the Docker doesn't work on my machine. Like what? So I have to fix the Docker in the machine. So I said, but you see, in CI everything like brings from the scratch, like a Docker installs from the scratch. So you see, everything works inside the Docker. It's something inside your machine. But the guy said, no, it's a problem in your code. So it's because I can't it run. So it was so long and so boring. Like communications with a lot of people to prove that this is not a joke. It's a hard work, really hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
No,
hear,
no,
I hear
and
you.
actually, all of the code to write is public.
Right.
You're not going to write some shitty code, making it public, because people
yes.
blame you. I mean,
Yeah.
they're going to
Yeah.
blame you anyway, but now they're going to have a reason.
Right. Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
you have a squared like n squared algorithm, or you have n factorial algorithm. So you should know that, shouldn't do it.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming on the show and talking about really what piqued my curiosity when it showed up on my desk, my virtual desk. PHP and Go, and how these two things sort of complement each other. It's been awesome having y'all, and I will now play our outro song, and then we will try to wrap this up right on time too.
Yeah.
Awesome. This marks the end of our episode. We didn't get to cover everything we wanted to, but we got the gist. We got it all. So what I
Yeah.
want you gents to do is
We
to
don't live anymore, right?
not actually make sure